Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, hi, can I please have your attention, everyone? Okay, guys, just a little bit, thanks very much. It's really great to see all of you here tonight. Thank you so much for coming to support Hayley Hill's book, It's Got to Be Perfect. And I'm sure once you've read it, you'll see that it is. We're all very excited, and it's just such a great atmosphere. It's so nice to see all of you here. I just want to introduce Hayley Hill, who's going to come up and tell you a little bit about her book.
Thank you, everyone. Well, I would just like to second that and really thank you all for coming. I really appreciate the support. Obviously, I'm working from the assumption you're here for the book and not the wine and chocolate. But there's a lot of familiar faces here tonight. But for those of you who don't know me so well, I'd like to give you a brief history and explain how the book It's Got to Be Perfect came about. So back in 2005, I'm not even going to calculate how many years that was, please don't tell me. I decided to quit my job, quite a respectable job, as a pharmacist, in order to become a matchmaker. My parents were a little bit perturbed by my sudden and rather drastic career change, but I had a vision. And my vision was to find love for all the lonely hearts in London, and then to find love for all the lonely hearts in the world. Looking back, I'm not sure if my decision was entirely altruistic. I think having written the book, I realised that at the time I set the agency up, I was 27, and I was wondering where my happy ever after was. I expected to be married by 28, children by 29, and this hadn't happened. I'd yet to meet my 6'2" human rights barrister with a six-pack who was going to whisk me away to a penthouse flat overlooking the Thames. So I had a few questions about love that remained to be answered. So I think that was also a lot of the reason that I set up the agency. So here at Adam Street is where it all began. And I had my first consultation sort of through that wall there on that chair. And I remember it vividly. I couldn't afford an office. I didn't have any money for marketing. I didn't have any business plans. So I'd gone out in the bars and clubs in London with business cards, tapping people on the shoulder and asking them if they were single. And if they were, would they like me to find their soulmate? So who could refuse an offer like that? So quite a few people did refuse that, strangely. But many people didn't. So I had my first consultation there with a glass of wine, because as I said, I couldn't afford an office, and I quite liked the idea of a bar being involved. I thought it facilitated the extraction of personal information from my clients. And the things I heard after a couple of bottles of wine, I think would have taken years to get out of them otherwise. And 6 years later, I had my final consultation, sitting over there. And in that time, in that 6 years, I think I learned more about human nature than most people learn in a lifetime. I had personally interviewed thousands of singles, and as a company, tens of thousands. And yeah, the last consultation I remember just as vividly. I was sitting there with my belly out here. That wasn't just the alcohol. I was heavily pregnant with twins. And I remember my notepad resting on the bump, asking people what they were looking for. And I remember the male clients and the female clients looking back at me, looking at the bump, looking back at me, and visibly rethinking their life plan. I knew then that it was time to hand the baton over, or should I say the Cupid's bow and arrow. So I sold the business 2 weeks before my twin girls were born, to Daniel Andre, handsome chap over there. Arms in the air, Daniel. So he's now responsible for all the lonely hearts in the world. Along with all the other matchmakers here tonight. I think there are a few in the audience. Yeah, there's one. Any more? It's like Twilight. They live amongst us. But anyway, so once I sold it, I had this overwhelming urge to document everything I had learned. And I wrote a book. And then I rewrote the book. And then I rewrote it again. I think the title, It's Got to Be Perfect, was a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I wanted to take the reader on the journey that I had taken. I wanted people to be able to experience what I had experienced through the pages of a book, rather than through 6 years of hard work and committed drinking. So it took a while. It turned out to be quite a chick-lit style book, and it's fiction, because I didn't really relish the idea of talking about my clients' personal lives, as much as they didn't really want me to write about them either. So it's a blend, a merge of the events, and a blend of characters, and a blend of scenarios that I experienced over the years. And it's quite honest. Even though it's chick lit, it doesn't smooth over the sort of rough edges of relationship. It deals with all of the things that make us a bit uncomfortable and things we don't like to admit and we don't like to talk about. So I'm quite pleased with it, and I think some of the early reviews have been very good, so I'm pleased, and I hope you read it. I really do. I know it's a big commitment to read a book these days. It is. Oh, you're laughing, but it is. So, and I hope you like it. If you do like it, please leave a review on Amazon. That would be really helpful. If you don't like it, then I'd prefer you keep that to yourself. Well, just give me 5 stars anyway. I gave you wine. So I've lost my train of thought now. Where am I? Yeah. So I think that concludes it. But if you do want to buy a copy as well, please buy it on Amazon, because the average book, since I've written a book, I've been doing all this research. I should have done it before, but the average published book sells 1,000 copies, and the average self-published book sells 100 copies. So it's, yeah, someone's really laughing at that. They obviously know. But it's a real challenge to get visibility. If you don't have £50,000 to buy W.H. Smith Book of the Week, or the window display budget for Waterstones, then it's really hard to get visible. And your only chance really is on Amazon. And if you leave reviews, then you can sort of work your way up the popularity list. And if you buy on Amazon, then you can work your way up the sales rank. And that's the only way you're ever going to be visible to anyone who doesn't directly know you. So my mum can only buy so many copies. So that being said, please do buy it online, but you can buy it here as well. If you can, we'll figure out how to do it on your phone. I will give you a free printed copy if you bought it online, and just show me the confirmation and I'll give you a signed printed copy. And if not, if you want to pay cash, then you can get 2 books for £10 tonight. So just go to the snug around there and I'll sign them for you. That's enough of the sales pitch. And now we have the real experts to come and talk. First we have Anders Sandberg, who's from Oxford University, and he's got a PhD in neuroscience, among many other accolades. And he's going to be talking about the scientist's perspective behind finding the one. And then after that we have Emma Ziff, who is a sex and intimacy expert, and she's going to be talking about the perfect sex life that we're all having. Mine's just gone from strength to strength in having twins. Okay, I need to stop talking now, don't I? I really do. Okay. Right. Well, and I also want to say thank you to Humble Grape for their wine and chocolate pairing. Apparently, James and Cameron tell me it's as difficult to pair wine with chocolate as it is to pair men with women. And also thanks to Lottie's Bakery for their cake pops, which you'll be getting when we finish the speeches. And thanks to Rock Beauty for the nail art in the goodie bags. But I'm going to hand you over to Anders now. I hope you have a good night. If you haven't spoken to me already, please come and talk to me. I really hope I get to speak to you all. Thanks very much.
Yes, time to go theoretical. After all, like many academics, I'm more into theoretical love than actual love. So there is a saying, which I don't really remember who said, that art is about me, science is about us. That is, art is about that particular things, that particular events, that particular persons and particular emotions, while science is trying to say something that would be true for most of us under most conditions. And ideally, of course, for most extended bodies in the known universe. The nice thing for the science of love is, however, besides all these interesting resonances we're getting with the microphone, is that love is a universal. There is no human society anywhere that doesn't have romantic love. However, they all disagree a bit on how important it is and what you're supposed to do with it. Some societies have argued it's a kind of madness. Enjoyable perhaps to the mad people, but you should really help them get out of it. After all, it can stand in the way of a good marriage. Other societies realize, we make this the foundation of our religion. And so on and so on. We invent all sorts of very individual and cultural explanations of what we're supposed to do with love. And the good news for the science of love is that despite that, when you're in love, it feels, of course, like this has never ever happened before to anybody else in the history of the entire universe. That's not exactly true. There are certain regularities, and those at least science can try to catch and say something about. So, over to the big question, which I think everybody asks themselves: why love? And I think the scientific answer is very simple: grandchildren. So when we go back to our remote ancestors trying to reproduce, well, having the couples produce children, that's good. But ideally the children should also do well. Grandchildren, that's where it actually is at. So the first vestiges of what we might call love is of course the urge just to find somebody and reproduce. And that works well if you're a salmon or some little insect, and although we might hope they're really enjoying their love life, it's not that much to it. When you become a more advanced mammal like us, you also need to actually care for your children. It takes a lot of effort to make sure that they actually grow up and have a chance to get their own children. And at that point, maternal love shows up. This is probably older than the romantic love we have. Systems to get at least one parent to stay around and care for the young. It's not always the mother. Seahorses, the males, have males rearing the child instead. But yeah, okay, well, we'll see how this sounds. Okay, yeah. You get at least weird science fiction-like special effects here from the sound system. In any case, the next step is of course when you get to really tough children to rear. I mean twins, oh dear. Human twins, even worse. Human children take years before they can grow up and hunt for their own food. And for that, you can't just have a single mother caring for them. It's possible, but it's tough. It's better if you actually have the male staying around. And evolution seems to have led to an exaptation, which is a fancy word for it just reused something it had already finished. That maternal love system. Let's put it in so the daddy also really loves his children. And the mother. And that seems to be the reason we actually got our romantic love. It built out of our maternal care for our children. When you do brain studies, you show pictures of the loved ones and strangers, you can see how brains light up in various patterns when mothers see the children and their husbands. But there is a lot of overlap. There are core systems of pleasure and reward and social affection that are the same. There are also interesting differences. It also turns out that we might have kind of three subsystems dealing with this. And one is of course the oldest one, the lust system. Find a mate, mate with him or her. And that's fairly simple, although of course it can be a lot of fun. And then they have the more tricky one, attachment. And we want to, and attraction. We want to find a good mate, the perfect one. So we're searching for among all the possibilities we see around us. Exactly how this works is actually a bit of a mystery. This is the part where science gets a bit embarrassed and starts saying, let's talk about something different. There have been interesting studies about pheromones, which work really well in a lot of animals, but we humans seem to be actually not having a very good pheromone system. We certainly react a lot to smells. No wonder we spend so much on perfumes. But it's still not a very reliable thing. It might just be personal likes and dislikes. There are some aspects of your immune system that seems to affect some of the chemistry. But again, we seem to be doing much beyond that. And part of the reason is, of course, we got so big brains. We can think about a lot of other things. We can imagine things. We can imagine the perfect one. We can imagine the perfect love. We can decide, no, I'm going to devote myself to religion or science and I'm going to go into a monastery. And that can override our emotions. The basic systems in our brain are kind of a foundation, but on top of that we build our own very complicated edifice. And finally we have that bonding system, because it turns out that adrenaline and the dopamine rush, when you find the right one, even if it just turns out to be the right one for this week, can't last forever. If you think about all the excitement and stress of being infatuated with somebody, it's pretty clear that we would burn out within a few months as a species if we just had that. We need a more long-term, more sustainable solution that actually gets us to hang together well. That bonding system is the part where science actually can say something confidently. There have been a lot of studies on prairie voles. Prairie voles are rather like humans, so it turns out that one subspecies, they are promiscuous. They don't hang together very much. They mate with anybody who seems to be nice and strike their vole fancy. And then there is another subspecies who are much more monogamous. Once they're together, they stay together. They're living a lovely little rodent life. It turns out that we can track down what the difference is in the brain, and of course